Hello and welcome to this YouTube channel for ACCA FR exam prep. My name is Adam. In this video, I'll be taking you through how we account for cash generating unit and impairment allocation of the various assets in the CGU. Let's look at the question. To start with the requirement, always look at the requirement. What will be the value of Fingal's property, plant, and equipment after the allocation of the impairment loss? So the details, the net assets of Fingal, a cash generating unit, are, so we have PP 200, allocated goodwill 50, product patent 20, net current assets. These are already at their realizable value, so these are their recoverable amount. So I will use RA. As a result of adverse publicity, Fingal has a recoverable amount of 200,000. So the whole CGU, the recoverable amount is 200. Now, as a principle, know that when we are allocating impairment to a CGU, we have to look out for goodwill in the CGU. Unless there is an obvious impaired asset, then we'll take the allocated impairment to the obvious impaired asset first before looking at the goodwill. But in this question, there is no obvious impaired asset. So the goodwill allocation the impairment allocation should start with the goodwill. So let's see. These are the carrying amounts. So in between, I'll say my impairment, and then I'll say my recoverable amount. The total amount was 200. So this, of course, is not okay. Let me go strictly how you would answer these in the exam, you having the multiple choice before I will elaborate on other aspect of it. So the allocated impairment for goodwill, this is off. This will go off. Sorry, this, yes, is the recoverable amount, and the impairment is the difference, and that should be 100,000 here. So if we take out 50 from 100, we are left with 50, and that this should be allocated between the remaining asset. So this is gone. The remaining asset in the CGU based on pro rata basis. But what are we to look at? So it means that the PP, the value should be how much we have here, 200,000, less the portion of the impairment that will be allocated to the PP. So we look at the remaining asset, which is product patent, and that is 20. So the total should be 220. So the proportion would be 200 over 220 times this is 200,000, please take note. Now, times the remaining impairment loss. So the 200 divided by 220, which is on a pro rata basis, times 50,000. This would give us 45,454. That is the portion that will be allocated to the PP. So when we take this 0.5, so let me run it up to 5. So when you take this from 200, so 200,000 minus 45,455, we have 154 545, and this should be the balance for PP. This should be the PP balance. So as part of the options is A. Now let me elaborate on this further. What it means here is that if we are to share, look at so at this point we have answered the question. I want you to note that we have answered the question. But just to elaborate, to look at, if we were to look at product patent, it means that the remaining balance, because the allocated impairment for this will be 45,455. So the remaining balance will be very straightforward. So 45,455 plus 50,000, that should give us 95. So take from 100, then we have 4545. So here the balance is 154,545. Here there's no balance, so 20,000 minus 4545, that should be 15,455, and of course this is not impaired, so 30,000. What I want to show you is that if you add up all these figures, it should give you 200. So let's try 15,455 plus 154,545 plus 30,000. That should give us 200,000. So you can check it to confirm. So it is the reason we're saying that the recoverable amount should be the balance after taking out any impairment. So this is how we answer the impairment allocation for a CGU. Always remember, the allocation of the impairment loss will be against goodwill and any intangible asset if there is no obvious impaired asset. And what I mean by that is that, let me just also elaborate further on that. Assuming that we had impairment loss of 100, however, there was a damaged asset. Let's say we had a damaged asset. A damaged asset of 10,000, and this asset is in PP. This asset is in PP. Now, because this asset is damaged and it has no recoverable amount, there is an obvious impairment on this asset. And what it means is that before we allocate the impairment to goodwill, we have to first take the 10 out of the PP before we go to goodwill. Alternatively, if this balance of the damaged asset were to be 60,000, it means that we take 60,000 out of the 200. The balance remaining after allocating the obvious impaired asset is 40,000. So it therefore means that the 40,000 will be charged against the goodwill, and the goodwill at the end will have a balance of 10 after we charge the impairment of 40,000. Very important principle to note. If there is an obvious impaired asset, we have to allocate the impairment loss to that asset first before going to goodwill. But if there is no obvious impaired asset, the guidance is that we go to goodwill first, followed by other intangible assets. And then the remaining asset, we allocate the goodwill to this asset on a pro rata basis. Very well. I hope this helps in your preparation for the FR exam. Please subscribe to this channel to receive updates on new videos.